Welcome, welcome, filmmakers! A special big welcome to our Wilmington, North Carolina, your newest chapter in Blackmagic Collective, and we're so excited they're going to get to have this Southern Women in Indie Film chat tonight. Welcome Kim Carr, the first to speak up, an MFA student. Please, everybody, if you're here, let us know where you're from, what you do in the biz. We'd like to talk to you throughout. Make sure you put your questions and comments in the box. If you're new to Blackmagic Collective, we're a collective of film and TV artists and crew. We meet regularly on the business and craft with education events that focus on the tech side. We also have initiatives that help filmmakers' careers grow. And all of our events and everything we do is free. Just sign up at blackmagiccollective.com and you will be part of the membership. Blackmagic Collective Film Festival is now accepting 20-minute or less short films. So you can go to Film Freeway and sign up there, get your film submitted. There's big prizes at the end, cameras, cash, the whole deal. Our next event is March 24th. It is our new works. It'll be our first frame filmmakers and our emerging actors who've done new works this year. And they will be sharing them. So please come out and support. And then later you can get to support and show your new works. And of course, thank you to our sponsor, Blackmagic Design. It is rare that you find a company that really caters to indie filmmakers like you do, so thank you, as well as our sponsor, Sigma. What else do I need to tell you? I think that's about it. Make sure you put your questions in the box. Tim, hello, Tim from our New York, he's our new New York chapter lead. Thanks for being here. Jasmine, she is from Atlanta, director and editor. And Kayla from New York City. Casey from Wilmington. Hey, Casey. Shannon is a director and film professor. I love that you guys are from all over. It's fantastic. And on that note, I want to bring up our new Wilmington chapter and chapter lead. Can you please throw Kate up for me, Harley? Hello.
Hey.
So, this is Kate Hinshaw. Know this face, know this name, especially if you're in the Wilmington area, because with all going well and COVID deciding to be nice, play nice COVID, we will be doing live events at some point and having everybody come out and actually meet in person. And Kate will be doing that. Kate, what made you jump on and decide to lead this chapter?
There's a lot of production going on here in Wilmington, and I have a really passion for Southern filmmaking. I'm born and raised in the South. I've lived all over, but I keep trying to escape, and it keeps calling me back. So
Love it.
Just being here, I think I just really wanted to find a way to support indie filmmakers in particular and people.
I really love that you are calling out another, like a place where films are actually happening. I think that everybody is looking for that new place to go to get away from LA. And so it's nice to hear that there's another place. And you guys are like, am I wrong? You guys like Oceanside or Lakeside, or there's like
we're right by the ocean, so it's not a bad place to be.
Love it. All right, I am going to hand it over to you. Have a great time, and everybody enjoy your Southern Women of Indie Film.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us this is our first ever Blackmagic Collective Wilmington event, and really excited to have everyone here. And we really wanted to kick things off speaking to women identified and non-binary filmmakers making great work in the South. And this is truly like a really talented group of North Carolina and Georgia-based filmmakers, Southern representation, seed and spark, and crowdfunding outside of maybe a traditional New York or LA Hollywood structure, and just the indie hustle in general. Because if you've ever had to crowdfund or make an indie film on a micro budget, it's not always easy. But with that in mind, I'll kick it over to Bloom and Anna Ray, who will be moderating this event. So if we can get them, yeah.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
So I wanted to kick things off by just doing another little introduction. First of all, I'm Bloom. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I'm a queer non-binary filmmaker. I live in Wilmington, North Carolina currently. And I'm actually working on a film right now with Kate, as well as one of our other panelists, Tiffany. The film is called Keepsake, and we're going to be talking more about it some today in the panel. But I wanted to point out that Keepsake is a production that is being put on by a collective that we have just started here in Wilmington called the Lunar Kitchen Film Collective, which is just a group of women, non-binary filmmakers that are just telling stories to express like the crazy world that we live in and stuff. So we're really fresh and we're really excited. So I wanted to go ahead and introduce my good friend Anna Ray, who's my co-moderator. We used to work at Cucaloris together, which is where we met, and we have become the best of friends ever since. So Anna?
Absolutely. My name is Anna Ray. I am also based here in Wilmington. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the founder and the creative producer for Portray Productions, which is a production company that highlights Black stories and especially Black voices in the Southeast and the Afro-Southern experience. I'm currently working on a web series that I'm about to go into crowdfunding for in the next couple of months called Who's Your People, with a couple of other Black Southern filmmakers in North and South Carolina. And yeah, I'm really excited to kind of jump into talking about filmmaking in the Southeast and what that experience is and kind of like the indie atmosphere around it. So I'm excited to be talking to Kate, and we also have Tiffany and Erika and Ebony and Kristi, and it's gonna be a good conversation. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Why don't we go ahead and get the rest of the panelists up on the screen? Hello, ladies.
Hey, y'all.
Hi.
So before we start, I wanted to do quick little introductions just so that everybody knows where everybody else is from, what they're working on, things like that. We already met Kate. Kate's, like I said, she's working on Keepsake alongside Tiffany and I, but Kate's also actually working on her own very early in development documentary about trans and non-binary documentary filmmakers. So that's a little bit about Kate. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about Tiffany, who again is working on Keepsake. Tiffany's located in Greensboro. And just to give a little bit more background on Keepsake, it's a queer feminist horror film that's going to be set in the Appalachian Mountains, and we are very excited to be creating it. In addition, Tiffany also heads the Queer Fear Film Festival, which I believe is having submissions open right now. So if you're interested and you have something that's queer and horror related, absolutely submit to the festival. So yeah, and then after Tiffany, I wanted to talk to, oh my goodness, excuse me. I wanted to introduce Erika and Kristi. Everybody knows Erika and Kristi from Honeyhead Films, and Honeyhead Films is a very successful Seed and Spark campaign that they just wrapped, which of course we're going to be talking a little bit more about. And they are of course located in Wilmington, North Carolina. And finally, we have Ebony, Ebony, you were like one of the only few people on here I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, so I'm really excited to get to know you a little bit more on the panel. Ebony's from Atlanta, Georgia. And Ebony also had a very successful Seed and Spark campaign for her film Jordan, which is a genre fantasy and, as she said, cli-fi or climate fiction to shape a fairy tale where everyone has agency and representation. Very interested to hear more about that one.
Same.
So yeah, now that we know a little bit more about all the panelists, we wanted to go ahead and start by saying, or asking just a general question, just to kind of like get a feel for the room, start everything off. And then just as a reminder to everybody, if you have any questions for the panelists, please leave them in the chat because we want to be sure to include all of you in this discussion as well. But one of the first things that we really want to get to the bottom of is, who is the voice in your filmmaking for each and every one of you? Do you think it's a group of people? Do you think it's you who is the voice in your filmmaking? Elaborate. I'm going to start by throwing it, I suppose, to Kate. So
I think it's all the voices in my head just coming together at once. No, my work tends to really, I really think a lot about the saying, you know, the personal is political. I think my work really comes from a very personal place. And it's filmmaking has become how I express myself, or how I survive, I guess. And so I really always approach things just, it's a very like me perspective, I think, and then kind of use that to kind of reach out and connect with others. But yeah, it does. Sometimes it feels very chaotic in there.
Tiffany, did you want to talk a little bit about who the voice is in your filmmaking? I know that you are like a director and a screenwriter, so you have plenty of voices, I'm sure.
I do, and it's interesting. I always tell myself that I am, you know, creating characters and stories, and none of it has to do with me, right? And then there always comes a point where my collaborators are like, "Yeah, I really saw you in such and such scene," and I was like, "Oh, really?" And then, you know, it comes flooding in, like the self-recognition. But I at least start feeling like I'm trying to tell a story that is someone else's, right? Usually a queer woman, right? That tends to be the area that I hang out in. But good writers and good directors know that you have to be able to connect to your stories, right? So you're inevitably going to find something in there in your own identity or in a community that you feel connected to. And that's what draws us to those stories.
Beautifully said. Ebony, did you want to talk a little bit about the voice in your filmmaking?
I think I'm similar to Kate. It's probably like a mixture of all the voices in my head, but a lot of my work, I think, pulls from ancestral places. So I like to think that like spirit is speaking to me, the ancestors are speaking to me, and the things that stick are what I'm supposed to be writing about, or what I'm supposed to be doing at that moment.
Mm-hmm. Sort of like divine interference. I love that.
Very much.
Erika and Kristi, I know you guys work together a lot, but did you both want to answer this question, or?
Yeah,
Sure.
I'll start, and then Erika, I'm sure you'll have a lot to add. Erika's our screenwriter at Honeyhead, and we're a collaboration, so we're creative partners and have been working together for the last maybe 5 or 6 years. And we have a really interesting dynamic because most of the time Erika's writing for an actor, and a lot of times that actor is me. I'm, as well as a producer, I'm an actor. And the project that we'll probably focus the most on today is a film called A Song for Imogene, which she wrote with me in mind. And we, have been collaborating on these characters, and they're highly personal. But I would say that Erika has this really unique way of taking like random bits of an idea and then turning it into like pure brilliance in the screenwriting process. Like, for instance, we're also, about to shoot a narrative short film. I just came to her and said, I want to play a sarcastic pizza delivery girl, like take it and run with it. And she wrote this sci-fi comedy that we're going to put up in a couple weeks here right before Imogene, just because we're like itching to be on set. So Erika, take it away and like tell them about your process. But we really like have this bounce back dynamic, which it's really nice to have a creative partner like that.
Yeah. I definitely feel like there are characters. I love writing for actors or for, people. When a character isn't already in my head from a person I'm writing for, a lot of times they do have fragments of myself or my personal experience or experiences of people close to me that I feel like have impacted me in a really significant way. So family members or friends who are close to me who have had experiences that I feel empathy towards, and I want them to be, and I want to explore them more, almost as like a catharsis for myself and for them. So that's a lot of times where it happens, but it could come from, a song I hear, and then I imagine a scene, and then I start writing it. So really the influx can kind of come from all different sides, or an idea Kristi had. I want to play an Aubrey Plaza type pizza delivery gal, and I was like, got it. Now there's an alien in it, and it's also like a heartfelt femme-driven piece. So it's like, it can come from anywhere. But I always like to focus on some kind of cathartic experience for the audience. I hope that people come and watch anything that we put up and walk away with a greater understanding of themselves or someone else, and a greater empathy for just the world around them. That's what I always hope that our work will do, is create empathy for the human experience kind of across all different types of folks. Perfect. Speaking of all different types of folks, one thing that definitely unifies all of us is that we are all located in the South. And as the Blackmagic Chapter Collective was just talking about, there's a lot of stuff happening right now in the South. So one question I did want to ask specifically to the folks that are in Wilmington is, what made you decide to come to Wilmington specifically? Was there something that was drawing you here that was different from LA or New York or Atlanta even? Or like, what has like kept you here, and what about the Southern lifestyle has made you stick with staying in Wilmington?
And to piggyback off of that, what does being a Southern filmmaker mean specifically to you? And how does the South play a character in your work?
I've been reflecting on this a lot lately, because the feature that Erika and I are producing is really unique to this area. It's set in rural North Carolina, so there's not a lot of other places this could be filmed. And I grew up in a town similar to, the character that I'm portraying. And I have lived in LA, I have lived in New York, I have lived in Atlanta, and I have this kind of like unique wanderlusty story that led me to Wilmington. And to be totally honest, what created an opportunity for me to root down here was meeting Erika and having that partnership and realizing that there's like a creative element where you can tap into something and like plant roots somewhere and build something, because otherwise it was like running and chasing opportunities for me. I felt like Wilmington in particular, my soul was really happy here, and the community is pretty tight knit. It's pretty small. I feel like even if you don't know each other well, you're aware of people and you're familiar and friendly with them enough where it can feel like a place where you can build community. And that's always been important to me. Yeah, I forget the second part of Anna's question, but that feels kind of like my general answer to that.
I think it pretty much answers it. Ebony, I know you're in Atlanta, so can you elaborate on what the South means like for you and how that plays a role in the work that you do creatively as an artist?
For sure. When Andre 3 Stacks said the South got something to say at the Source Awards, I legit thought he was talking to me, like no lie. I took it personal, and I hold that to my heart in the way that I work. So I could be anywhere and do this work. I could go to New York, I could go to LA. Some days I think like it's hard doing it down here, just to be very honest with you. But the stories that I tell are so specific to the South. Like I said before, so ancestral. It's so much ingrained in the red clay of where I'm from that the breadth of the story that I tell, I feel like I have to be anchored here. Another part about that is I feel like I deserve to tell stories where I'm planted. Like I deserve, as a Southern filmmaker, to not have to export myself to another city or another state that's not familiar to me, that feels out of my comfort zone. I don't have community. I can't have my family's cornbread. Like those type of things matter to me. Like I need that. And I think it's so important to the work that I do. So I think just being a Southern storyteller for me just means kind of sticking myself in the red clay and saying that I'm going to tell stories here, no matter how hard it gets.
That's honest and it's true, and I resonate with that a lot. Just in my work as well. Tiffany, I'm curious to hear your answer to filmmaking in the South.
Yeah, I definitely also really resonate with what Ebony is saying, right? Like I think in some ways it's incidental to my filmmaking sometimes that this is where I am, right? And I would make work wherever I lived. But the funny part of that is I actually did live in New York and didn't make the same kind of work, right? I made work that felt much less personal to me because it often wasn't my work, right? Like you just get involved in sort of these big communities and there's always something going on. And so you're like breathlessly running around trying to keep up. And then you get home and you find that you have no energy to like pour back into yourself. So when I moved back to the South to be near family, right, like that had all of its own wonderful, like comforting things to it. And then realized that I just had like this creative wellspring in me that was ready to overflow. And then the challenges were like, crap, there's like no infrastructure here to like support me in this work, but that's okay, right? Because the work is also the thing that gives me energy. So like it keeps me going even when it's hard.
For
Kate,
sure.
do you have any answer? I'm sorry, Bloom, continue.
No, you are good. I was actually about to ask Kate if she had an answer. So yeah, we're on the same page.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, this is, I mean, everything y'all are saying, I resonates with me. And this is something like Ebony and I talk about like a lot. Yeah, I mean, a big reason why I moved to Wilmington, just to be transparent, was because I got a job teaching at the college here at UNC Wilmington. And that was a sustainable way for me to be able to be a filmmaker. And, you know, I think if I count all the places I've lived in New York, London, Sao Paulo, Boulder, Atlanta, and now Wilmington. So I'm not kidding when I say I can't escape the South. I keep coming back. But I began to notice, like, when I would fly back home to Atlanta, I would get this like surge of energy. Like I'd be on the plane, like, okay, I'm ready to like, you know, organize and create things. And you know, like that community is really what does it. because it's not Atlanta, right? Like it's the community. Like it's the infrastructure, like in New York and LA is so much better. And I'm sorry, I'm not sugarcoating it, but like it is. But it's like, it's literally like the conversations Ebony and I have had in her living room about indie film. It's, you know, the kind of organizing and the creating work that really keeps me going. And it's the affordability. I've got to a point where I was like, I want a house. I want like a backyard, you know? And that, to have that space both for myself, but also to be able to like rent a studio to shoot in, and not have to like lug gear up a six floor like walk up in Brooklyn. Like that to me means a lot. And I realize that's probably angered a few New York people saying that, but it's really, to me, I think you should be able to create work wherever you want to create work. And for me, that's here in the South. So
I have a question for anyone. What is one misconception that you think people who aren't Southern filmmakers or from the South have about either Southern artists, Southern filmmakers, or the actual work that happens here? What's a misconception that people get wrong when they hear the word Southern filmmaker?
I have some thoughts on that. Yeah. I think that just being a production company here, we have a lot of folks from out of town who often come to us for resources. They're just interested in producing a project. And I think the general conception is, well, but do you have crew? Do crew lives here? Do people exist in, you know, in the South that, you know, or in Wilmington that are, you know, talented? Is it a viable market? Like people don't understand that there's like a pretty healthy film community here. So that's always interesting to educate people and invite them in and say, this is actually a really wonderful place to create, especially independent work, you know, apart from the studios that are here. And I think that there's also a bit of a misnomer about the type of work that comes out of here, the type of stories that people in the South want to tell. I think the South is often painted as a caricature, whether you're talking about the people that are here or the landscape of the South. And there's just so much more diversity in the stories and the type of voices that have come out of the South and are still making content here. And I think that the stories are very interesting. So I find that to be a fun educational experience that we often get to participate in as a production company, is in inviting people in and saying, it's all good. We have all these resources. We have above the line creatives. They live here, they work here. And, you know, it's more than just like, you know, the Dukes of Hazzard type of people. You know what I mean? So that's what I would remark on that.
Anyone else? Tiffany, Ebony?
Tiffany, you want to go?
I mean, it would just be to echo everything that Erika said. Dukes of Hazzards came to mind immediately. and then I think, yeah, like I think the South is associated with a lot of types of art that aren't film, right? There's a lot of, you know, sort of craft work that is done here. And that is all well and lovely. But the idea that like we're on the cutting edge of anything, right? That we use technology to create things is sort of, you know, that sounds mythical to people who live in these big urban areas. But I'm like, no, it's true, right? Like I've shot on a red, and like, you know, it doesn't fall apart when it passes the Mason-Dixon line. It's okay.
So I love how Movie Maker magazine named Atlanta and Wilmington best places to live and work as a filmmaker this year. I was like, hey, that's what's
we're here.
Yeah, we're here. Here we are. All of us right here. We're
all here living. We're literally all here living and working. So oh, speaking of living and working in the film industry or in the indie film industry, I wanted to ask, just because I'm a little bit curious on what an actual like day-to-day would be like for each of you in the like form that your project is in currently. I know that some of us are in pre-production, some of us are in production, and some of us are in post-production. So I wanted to start by asking Kate and Tiffany to maybe talk a little bit about like what's the day-to-day like for an indie filmmaker who's in pre-production.
Kate, you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, for Tiffany's film Keepsake, I'm coming on as a marketing producer. So a lot of that is scheduling posts, trying to sound quippy online, things like that, which, you know, is a crazy job. Like marketing is so hard. And that's one thing that I think as an artist is just like or like any small business owner, is just kind of an unfair burden on everyone. It's like, oh, so I have to be good at this craft, but then I also have to be really good at marketing myself. And it really is, you're doing the job of like 2 or 3 people. But then for my film, which is a documentary about women, trans, and non-binary cinematographers, and this exploration of stock photography, of how we present women in media. It's a kind of comedic documentary. For that, right now, I'm in the process of applying to grants. And so, being part of a university, that helps. I just applied to a couple of internal grants here at UNCW, but I also look to, Southern Documentary Fund is a really great resource that I highly recommend for anyone, both from an education standpoint and from the standpoint of they have really great grants. But yeah, a lot of applying to grants, and then building pitch decks right now. And then after that, it's going to turn into figuring out what gear and, how much film I can get away with shooting and kind of everything like that. So I'll kick it to Tiffany to talk about Keepsake, because I know you have a lot more to say about Keepsake.
Sure. Well, yeah. And it's interesting too, right? Like, I bet that this is the case for everybody, that there are multiple projects, right? Like Kristi and Erika have talked about this, Kate just talked about this. So I'm also sort of stirring a few pots. So it's not that every day I'm working on this feature, which is sort of the biggest thing. But because it's not my full-time job, right? And nobody's paying me a full-time salary to do that, you've got to sort of sneak the other things in there too. But for Keepsake, at least, the day-to-day right now is sort of in a fun place. We've got a shooting script, and we're moving into the ramp up of pre-production for a shoot that we're doing over Memorial Day weekend, which are some flashbacks that will sprinkle in throughout the longer production, which isn't happening until 2023. And so we're doing the production design meetings, and I'm meeting with my cinematographer and my sound team in all of these separate little meetings where we're dreaming, right? First, that's the fun part. And then you're like, oh, we probably don't have the money for that, or we really don't have the time for that, right? So I like to start sort of in the sky, and then as we move forward over the next couple of weeks, we'll be culling that down so that we can have something manageable to wrap our hands around in about 6 weeks, I guess. And then we're going to be doing that same process on a larger scale for the rest of the film, right? So moving into casting, which is always fun and exciting. I've been working on those breakdowns, and we'll start sending them out in a couple of weeks. And so it's all of the little pieces that make up a film, right? Like, it is sort of, Kate said, starting a company. Honeyhead can certainly talk about this, right? Like, every production is like a mini company that you have to start, and you have to keep all of those balls going. So it's never a shortage of things to do. And day to day, I don't ever know what's going to pop up. Like yesterday, my assistant director was location scouting and sending me pictures. And I was like, oh, this is cool. Didn't know that was going to happen at all, but she just happened to be there. So yeah, always something fun and exciting happening.
Tiffany, I feel like we're in the same world. I know we're kind of like in the production block of this chat, but truly, like, we don't start shooting till May. So we're really in prep as well. Today was nuts. We had a casting session. We had a meeting with our wardrobe supervisor. We were looking at mood boards. We interviewed some PAs. We have our interns in office that are production office assistants for Imogene on Wednesdays. Wednesday's like our Imogene movie day. So we get to focus fully on the feature. We pause all work for our company, and we just spend a solid 8 hours together. Erika was like toggling between, she was on the Zoom call with our composer in Denver. I feel like we like got an insurance quote out. We did so many random things today, but it's like every Wednesday we just stack it full of any and everything you can think of. And like, I had to leave a little early. I was like, I need to compose myself before this really cool collective chat. So I like left the intern to be like labeling scripts and things like that. But Erika, what do you want to tack on? Like, it's the most exciting feeling to actually be in this phase of production, I feel.
Yeah, I think I think that it's a labor of love, and it has been for quite some time for us, this film. I finished a first draft of the feature-length script. This is based off of a short film. But the feature-length script was first completed in its original form in 2020, April 2020, so about 2 years ago. So it's been kind of this labor of love and rewrites and pitching. And so being able to enter pre-production in earnest, being greenlit is a really wonderful feeling. And I think it's new for us because we've just been moving forward in faith, and like, our crew has been with us and they're interested, and our department heads have been, along for the ride. But it's really wonderful to be able to, offer your crew, a deal memo at the end of the month and things like that. So it's really having to be, we say it's like, it's real. When a project is funded at Honeyhead, we're like, that's real now. So we'll just like, it's coming out of the theoretical world and moving into the tangible world. So that always feels really great.
What about you, Ebony? You're in post-production on Jordan.
I finished post, thank God.
Oh, look at you. It's really reeling now. Congrats.
I finally got out of post. I'm in the festival submissions right now. So I've submitted all the things to the festivals. My stomach is in knots every day. You know how that goes. But while I'm doing that, I'm currently finishing up a feature script. So working on the next phase of just, to y'all's point, stacking up and, growing the work. I love short films. Don't want to do it my whole life though. So I definitely want to get a feature under my belt, and I'm working on a documentary too.
So my question is for those of you all that are working like the muggle job, right? The day-to-day, the job that pays the bills while we also work on the independent things. How do you separate that work, and how do you juggle it in the day-to-day needs of being the indie filmmaker? Because a lot of times, like, the normal job is completely different, or it takes up a lot of energy. So how do you maintain the balance in your day-to-day?
I love that you called it a muggle job.
I know, right?
It's kind of like hats off, Anna Ray. I can't totally speak to it. I'm going to let somebody else lead it, but I'll just say that like at Honeyhead, we do have to do brand work, client work, commercial work. And while we are usually working on film or media, photography and things, it still is a toggle. You still have to like be able, what we do is just pick a day of the week. And it's like, this is religiously imaging, and we're not going to do anything, not going to take meetings. It's like all about the movie so that you can do that horse race with your projects. But if anybody wants to go back down memory lane, I got some muggle jobs that we can talk about, but I'll let somebody else take it from here.
I was going to say, like, I don't have too many peers, honestly, who aren't kind of in between worlds and working both sides of it. I think the thing that roots me is understanding that to be a happy filmmaker, I have to be a fed filmmaker. I really like a certain type of soap. I like a certain type of shampoo. I have to use a certain type of fabric softener. It's just like certain shit that matters to me at this point. And I was at a point, I'm in my 30s now, and I was at a point when I was younger where it would kind of like sacrifice food for the art. I don't advise it. Totally don't advise that to anyone. I think that for me, it's about making sure that my stability and the home that I embody as my physical body as well, that is supported, especially, being, I don't want to say marginalized folks, but not being a white cis man. Sometimes just like going through this world, it's hard. And so you're just up against a lot of things that try on your body. And I think the most that you can be fortified in the body and in the mental space, you get to produce the most art. So in saying that, you might have to work some jobs at Pizza Hut. If you're like me, I worked at Girl Scouts in Greater Atlanta for like so many years. But I got like so many good stories out of it. So it's twofold there. And then you take a leap of faith if you're fortunate, if you have the privilege to do so, to be honest with you. And then from there, I think I just made myself say that I'm going to do film. So now I teach non-traditional students filmmaking. And it's wonderful. It makes me feel like I'm still in the vein of the work while, fortifying the next filmmakers.
Yeah, I think like to add on that, I mean, I really think being fed and having like being taken care of, like there's such this idea of you have to suffer for your art. I have a disability that I have to take medication for, and if I don't have insurance, it's really expensive. So there was just no way I was gonna kind of stay freelance and kind of in the indie world. Of course, you can join unions and do all of that. But I realized after in my 20s, like early 20s, particularly after about 5 years working on film set, I realized I was like, I'm spending all this time working in film and not actually making like the film in my heart. So for me, I wanted to be more than a camera assistant. I didn't want to be broke. Like all of these things, I was like, I would rather take the 9-to-5 job and, be a like weekend filmmaker, because that to me, it may not sound as sexy as like, being the starving artist, but that I was happier doing that. And even before teaching at UNCW, I was working at a tech job. And I probably still would be working at a tech job if I wasn't at UNCW. But I do think teaching does provide an interesting kind of avenue. And again, if you're lucky, because jobs in academia are not always easy to come by. But having an institution to kind of back you in your work has really helped me a lot. And so I feel like I found this like little bit of a loophole, but like Kristi Ray, I could definitely go down the memory lane of muggle jobs because there were a lot.
I'll just tack on, Kate, that I think it's really cool because some of our interns are your students and they're female students, and they talk about how cool you are and how awesome it is to be inspired by a female cinematographer. So your representation at UNCW is really important even to us. So like as the working production company that's going to hire your students when they graduate, it means a lot that you're a female cinematography professor. And I just think the ripple effects are really special. So I love that you fell into a job that can support everything that you need, but is also supporting this community. I think that's really cool.
I'm so glad they think I'm cool. Like that's just going to make me
right. I told them about this and they're like, oh, Kate's going to be there. I was like, yeah, like, hello, come on, join.
That's awesome.
I love that.
What about you, Tiffany?
So my day job is in nonprofits. And that is another sector that I really love. And so for a long time, like many people have already said, I was sort of like burning the candle from both ends and was just like totally exhausted. I think it was a combination of like hitting my 30s maybe, but also having a child that made me be like, oh, I am doing this wrong, right? Like there is no sense of balance in my life at all. And so one of the super critical things to my creative development was having to leave an organization that I actually really loved, but that was taking too much from me, right? Like it was not sustainable to do that and have my family and make films. Like I just physically could not do it. So I moved to another nonprofit that demanded less of me and then like became very fierce at protecting that creative time, much in the way that Kristi and Erika are talking about, like Wednesdays. Yeah, I've got my schedule set up so that like Mondays are film days for me. And I try really hard to keep that space protected and to treat it, with the same level of importance that I treat my day job that gives me insurance and, pays my mortgage. But hopefully someday we'll find a situation that just lets me do that from film.
I think that's the situation a lot of us are looking for sure.
Right.
So one thing I'm very interested in is funding, because that's something that I personally, as a filmmaker, have not like dabbled in very much. I know that a lot of us have either completed a Seed and Spark campaign, or we're getting ready to start a Seed and Spark campaign. So Ebony, Kristi, and Erika, since you guys have like already gone through the bases, do you have any like, I'm not going to say tips and tricks or whatever. What I would rather ask is there anything that you guys would have done differently that you think would have had a better outcome? Or do you think that the things that you did were exactly what you needed for your particular Seed and Spark campaign? And how did you decide to do those particular things?
Wow, that's a big question. I think Kristi and I were preparing for our Seed and Spark campaign before we even knew we were. So that's an interest. I'm very proud of how the campaign turned out personally. But I think that it if we hadn't been building the community we were building just by kind of being authentically ourselves and kind of, I wouldn't say breaking the rules, but doing our own thing in a way, and telling stories for the sake of telling them and kind of just not waiting for permission in order to make films. I think that inspired people, and people were asking to donate to the film before there was a Seed and Spark campaign. That was sort of the genesis of the idea to crowdfund, was the fact that people were asking how to contribute. And we had a few friends of ours, Chris Everett, who's a wonderful documentary storyteller here in Wilmington, told us, I think like a year ago, I had like coffee with him and he was like, you need to do a Kickstarter or something. He's like, y'all just need to do that. And I was like, Chris, I don't know if we're built for that, you know, but turns out it worked out. So I don't know, Kristi, maybe you have some thoughts and reflections, but I think that if we hadn't had this community to begin with, a lot of times I see people starting out just as like a single person even, and that can be very grueling. So I definitely think there's a lot of things I would say we avoided without realizing we were avoiding them, you know, by being this kind of dynamic duo and building a team around ourselves before we even started, and building a platform that would allow for a crowdfunding campaign. I think were some things that other filmmakers might not think to do, or might not think to start thinking about their crowdfunding campaign like a year or two before they actually want to do it.
Yeah, Bloom, I think this is a great question. Honestly, it kind of like stumped me. I was like, what would I do different? Because it was obviously really successful. We raised more than we tried to, and it was awesome. I was exhausted. I was the campaign manager, but I feel like we did a great job. And I agree with everything Erika said. We also recorded a podcast episode where we go way in depth for like an hour about everything she's talking about, like building the audience and the things that we feel like we did that made it really dynamic and like a community effort, and not like all about me, because it can just feel so weird doing something like that. And I thought of what I would change, to be totally honest, and this is not throwing shade on Seed and Spark, but they talked me down from a higher goal. And they were like, whoa, you want to raise 80,000? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, no, you, in order to raise 80,000, you need 4,000 people in your email database. You need 16,000 followers. They had all of these like things that were wrong. And I had to, it wasn't like, I didn't like push them, but they made me like change my number to 50K. And I wish I had kept it at 80, because we raised 75, and I'm like, dang, I think we could have done that, but it's all good. Like it all worked out fine. But I felt like a week before we wrapped, you know, we had already hit our goal. I was like, dang, I feel like I got led astray a bit, because they kind of underestimated what I knew we were going to bring to the table, which was not just like people who cared about our film. It was like the Wilmington community that wanted to see another feature be made, and it didn't have to be imaging. It just was like, let's rally because this is happening here. So to be honest, if I could have gone back in time, I maybe would have had a little bit more confidence and said, no, I would have like pushed a little harder and said, I think we can do this.
I think that's something that a lot of people that identify as women, or who are like born as women, don't identify as a woman anymore. That's something that we all struggle with, I feel like, is that confidence to be like, oh, I can actually reach this goal.
Yeah.
I think it's important that you talked about that. Yeah.
It's a good question, because I wouldn't have thought about it otherwise. Ebony, I'm curious how your campaign went and how you feel about all of this.
Oh God. I'm just now getting my edges back. So, you know, it was hard. It was super hard. To be very honest with you, crowdfunding is something like probably a lot of folks, I don't like doing it. I don't want to do it again, to be very honest. I had to be pushed into doing it. One of my producers had to let me know, like, girl, you've done enough work. You built enough community in Atlanta. The folks are going to show up for you. I think on my end, of course, like the asking for money thing is always difficult, especially in certain precarious times such as these, because it's like, make art, survive the world, you know? But I think two things can be true, right? To survive the world, we make art. Once I got past some of the I guess, barriers of just asking for it and be willing to receive it. I had already, to your point, done a lot of the work as far as a community and just kind of organizing already. I would say a bit of advice before I talk about what I would do different for everyone is to really be honest with yourself about the community that you are a part of and that you watered. I think to show up with a crowdfunding campaign of a certain amount or just any amount, to be honest with you, I want people to pour into you. And they haven't seen you at local film nights. They haven't seen you support their things. It's going to be hard. When other people have crowdfunding campaigns, I pour into theirs. And so it's just kind of one of those twofold things where you give a little to receive a little, and you hopefully do it with good intentions. Don't do it alone. I was fortunate that I had a great friend of mine who's also an actor. And I knew she was smart. I knew she was brilliant. And I should say they, sorry to change their pronouns. I knew they were brilliant. And I asked them, I said, can you help me? Can you be here for me? And they were like, we're going to do it. So I could have not done it without support. I don't think anyone should do it without like a dynamic duo or more people. And just be ready, be ready to get creative with getting people invigorated about your campaign and be ready to, I think, just rally the masses, which is something that if you're like me, I'm not the person who works the room all the time. I kind of just like to sit back. So it taught me about working the room virtually more.
Do you think the Southern kind of mindset around community affected your crowdfunding campaigns, both Ebony and Kristi, and like how Southerners, I guess, define community? Do you think that played any role in how your campaigns went? Just out of curiosity.
I think personally, the themes around imaging, people were just ready to see a movie about the South. In addition to what you're saying, Anna Ray, I think that being in a small town, like being the big-ish, medium-ish fish in a like an area, a region, it's great. And we talk about that on the podcast too. We didn't try to run this campaign in New York. We weren't one of, 15 films crowdfunding in North Carolina. If you go on Seed and Spark and you look at films near me, it's like a really cool movie in Charlotte, a movie in Asheville, and then imaging. It was like 3 films in North Carolina. So you can stand out in that way. And I would recommend being in a smaller community to try to make a name for yourself in that way.
Yeah, I feel like small communities like to support projects that they feel attached to, or they like know you personally. So I do feel lucky that we made this first feature film of ours with the support of this community. And I do think that so many people reached out about the themes and, these kind of breaking these generational cycles that we explore in the film, and people identify with that, whether they were from the South or elsewhere. It's just this sort of like small hometown, this like flight from a hometown feeling that the film explores. People identified with, across the board. So I think that it really did behoove us to be fundraising in such a intimate filmmaking community like Wilmington, where people could really get behind the film, and we weren't, people aren't always inundated with these types of campaigns all the time, so the community can really rally behind them.
And we Ebony, I will let you talk, but we had a graphic that I created. I'm trying to get used to this camera. It's like the map of the US and like all the honey where people were contributing, and it was all the Southeast. There was a good pocket in New York because we had a couple amazing stranger female filmmaker producers who found the campaign online and were like, I'm going to give you a grant. I'm going to give you a grant. I'm going to give you a grant. And we're like, what's happening? Who are you? You're amazing. But there was like 2 people in LA. Like people just didn't connect with it. And that's okay. That's not our market. That's not our audience. We know it's a Southern story. And that was the core. It's like the honey exploded from here to Atlanta. It was like you couldn't see the map because it was just all honey. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, that probably sounds really random, but it was like visually a map for me, and it was very obvious where the people who were supporting. And they also came from the Midwest because, like Erika said, they were like, this is my story. I'm not Southern, but it's a small town and I get this.
What about you, Ebony? I know Atlanta's a slightly larger market than Wilmington, so
I think one disadvantage about Atlanta is that it is kind of a more of a blooming market, if you will, in that sense. And so it kind of can get the elbow room, if you will. It sometimes doesn't feel like it's as much as you would need to kind of shine light on one project. With that being said, I think for me, because my film tapped into, in particular, Black mermaids and folklore, I think we did 2 campaigns, one for production, one for post-production. The second go around, we had to get like way more creative because I don't have as big as a financial community as one would perhaps need or even think I have. And so I had to stretch a little bit beyond. And for me, I was very blessed. One of my dear friends, she calls herself the Nat Minister, the Nat Bishop, I should say. And she has like a following of a whole bunch of people. And I cried her all my Black girl tears. And I was just like, girl, I'm just having like the hardest time. Like, what is going on? It's not moving. The second campaign is not moving. And I don't know what to do. Like, and she was, girl, I got you, like a Black girl. And she reposted the little snippet I did, and $5 shoot in, $10 shoot in, 15, 20. And it was just the most beautiful thing ever. So I think sometimes just telling people what you need will open up so much for you. And you don't know who can help you. Like, I didn't know that she could do that. And I didn't want her to use her platform in that way. But I think sometimes if we just kind of loosen it up and just allow ourselves to tell people, hey, I need help, you'll be amazed who you're connected to or who they're connected to.
That's great. That's really very true.
Yeah.
I know Kate and Tiffany, community shows up differently for you guys right now just because of the space that you're in production. How do you think Southern Community has like helped you with the pre-production process thus far?
Sure. I mean, I think all of my filmmaking is really just like attributed to like the strength of the community that I have built around me, right? Like there are very few types of films you can make on your own entirely, and narrative really isn't one of them. So I think I wouldn't be making my second feature if I hadn't had people that I could call upon to make a bunch of really at first terrible short films, and then some lovely short films that I'm really proud of too, but building not just my skills, right, but building those people, right? Because I'm also to a point in my filmmaking where I don't want to make films with people I don't know anymore, right? Like you have to invest so much time and energy into being on a set that I just want to do it with people who make me feel good, right? And who I want to go and be around, and not people who are like competitive or just bring like a negative energy to that process, right? Because I've done a ton of that type of filmmaking and it's just not fun. That's not the part that I like. So getting to build up the team that we're bringing on to Keepsake has been so amazing. Like every single person I unequivocally love who we have brought on board so far. And so that's the best feeling, right? Like knowing that every time I go into a meeting, I'm going to be talking to somebody who is a friend and somebody who is creative in a way that like inspires my creativity. So it just makes the whole process amazing. And then when I'm struggling and I don't want to bring down my team, I've got a whole community of writers and other filmmakers that I've found in Greensboro just by screening their work and giving them notes on their films. And I can go and talk to them and be like, y'all, I'm feeling really insecure about myself as a filmmaker right now. And they can lift me up too. So like having community in all of these different ways. And I think that was what Lunar Kitchen grew out of for us, right? Like wanting to just formalize community around a group of people who really seem to creatively get each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think community is everything, right? Like I mean, last week I went to shoot film with a friend in Maine who I met online and I never met in real life. But it was like when you kind of like find that, you just like find these twin flames kind of like all over the place. It's really beautiful. And I think like I donated to both Honeyhead and Jordan. And I think like I was just so excited to see that work. And I do think like if you want to like get it back, you do have to like build community and from an earnest place too. Like I very earnestly am like a cheerleader for all of my friends and people I meet. And yeah, it's just amazing. And even if you can't like financially support Student Sparks, you know, you can like follow the campaigns, and that also like financially helps out with like their incentives, which you can see on their site. So even like strangers, I'll just like go and like kind of follow their campaigns too. So.
And what a great way to meet new people. I know that I met Tiffany and Kate through the crowdfunding, and there's been, I mean, crew members that we've already hired for the film we met through the campaign. It's been really amazing. It's like a community building. If you take the money out of it and you think truly, like what they say on Student Spark, you're building an audience for your career, you're building a community for yourself as a filmmaker, and you think about it like that, you change your perspective. That's my biggest takeaway, is like, you're not asking for money. You're actually just getting people excited about what you're doing, and you're building a community, and it takes the pressure off. And it's like, I don't know, I'll give a little tip. Just like stack your wish list with you know you can get, and then you're going to be fine. If you like don't get your financial goal, just call in a favor and be like, yo, Honeyhead, can I borrow your camera? And we'll be like, cha-ching, there's $8,000 for you. Like, you know, just like hook your homies up. There's like a back door, and just in case, if you're feeling scared, like, you're building community, you got this.
Yeah, for sure. And your campaign is a marketing tool as well. I know it was a great marketing tool for us. I mean, it's more than just funding your film. I mean, we were able to get interest from, you know, prospective investors through the campaign, and use it as a yes and. That's what I would say to people, is like, try to use your campaign as a yes and to this, like, and say, okay, we're going to run this campaign. We're going to use the campaign, you know, in tandem with approaching potential outside investment, if that's something that you also need for your project, which was our case, you know. So they worked symbiotically in a really beautiful way that has allowed us to move into production this summer.
Great. So I think we are very close to wrapping. I wanted to end the night by just like saying thank you to everybody, and to remind everybody here and also everybody in the audience that we are a community. If anybody is interested in reaching out to us, absolutely, we will try to talk to you as much as we possibly can. It's very important to all of us to be supporting people like us in this industry, or even not in this industry, in just the indie filmmaking sphere, and just as women and non-binary people. I think it's incredibly important. So I wanted to thank y'all so much for such a good conversation. This has really been eye-opening for me, just where I'm at right now in my career. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Yes, and again, special thanks to Blackmagic Wilmington chapter. If you guys are interested in, again, joining some more community, if you're in Wilmington, join the Wilmington Blackmagic chapter. Go see Kate, all that fun stuff. So we appreciate everybody for being here, and everybody have a good night.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
And yeah, just to close things out, if anyone wants to learn more about Blackmagic Collective here in Wilmington, and has ideas or things that you know, you might want to see in this community, reach out to me. I think that's my Instagram handle, but you can also find my email. It's on, I think Blackmagic Collective has all that information, but please ping me. Would love to hear from you. And yeah, thanks so much, everyone.